ironically, my background, I'm in pharmaceuticals, so I've had a lot of interactions with medical professionals, nurses, and I love you guys. I was looking back on a Facebook post, and this is well before I even ever showed up here. And it says, about nurses. Somebody asked, "You're a nurse? How cool. I wanted to do that when I was a kid. How much do you make?" The nurse replied, "How much do I make? I can make holding your hand seem like the most important thing in the world when you're scared. I can make your child breathe when they stop. I can help your father survive a heart attack. I can wake myself up at 5 a.m. to make sure your mother has the medicine she needs to live. I work all day to save the lives of strangers. I make my family wait for dinner until I know your family member is taken care of. I make myself skip lunch so that I can make sure that everything I did for your wife today mattered. I make myself work weekends and holidays because people just don't get sick Monday through Friday. Today, I might save your life. How much do I make? All I know is I make a difference." And you're beautiful people. I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old daughter who I'm sure some of you met through my experience here. They want to be NICU nurses. I don't know if they have the smarts to do it, but so I'm going to just try to stumble through some of my points. This is Jocelyn. Jocelyn was born at, actually, next slide, and I'm just going to get prompted by what I need to talk about. I need to kind of lay the groundwork as to what has happened in our life because it contributes to the overwhelming fear that we went through coming in here. So back in March of 2014, we were down in Florida, and so Carolyn, my wife, was 22 weeks pregnant, and we lost our baby boy in Florida after our March break with my kids. So that was March. Fast forward to August 12th, which is my birthday, which is when Carolyn announced we're pregnant again. It was so fast. It was so unexpected. But it was just the most amazing thing ever to know that we were going to have a chance again. December 24th rolls around, and actually, let me back up 3 days. December 21st, Carolyn says to me, I feel like I'm having contractions. This was a Saturday morning. And so we went to the Oakville Hospital, where ironically our OB was working that morning. And she monitored Carolyn and did a test, the fetal fibronectin test, to determine preterm labor, potential preterm labor. She said, "I just want to caution you guys, these things come back false positive all the time." Sure enough, positive. So she said, "I'm going to have to call a level 3 hospital, and I'm going to get you sent there right away." And me sitting there, I said, "Well, listen, can you maybe do Hamilton? Because I don't want to have to go take the Gardiner every single day and deal with traffic." And she said, "If you go to Buffalo, if you go to Kingston, you get a bed. So you go where you go." She graduated from Sinai, so I think that was her first preference. Sure enough, we came to Sinai, and it was Saturday the 21st, it doesn't matter. They monitored us here for 12 hours, and they said, "You're good to go. Like, everything is okay." So that's what we did. We went home. Fast forward to the 24th. And the 24th, Christmas Day, we have 16 people coming over. And I made sure Carolyn was relaxed in bed, doing nothing. So my youngest and I were getting the table set, getting everything ready. And I went for a run on our treadmill because I thought I was probably going to have some drinks that afternoon and burn some calories before a few cocktails. And finished my run. Carolyn said, "Honey, you got to come here." And she noticed some blood in her urine. And I didn't even shower, clothes off, different set of clothes on, packed our stuff right to Sinai. And we presented here. She was having contractions every 4 minutes. When I walked in the door here, it was the most helpless feeling. I've never experienced not wanting to go through what we went through back in March. It was unbelievable. So right then and there, I was just blinded by emotions. But it's that fight or flight response that certainly kicks in, and that's exactly what we did. So we were we were in the triage, labor and delivery, and Carolyn, of course, was freaking out. I was trying to stay composed. The nursing staff was obviously trying to keep us relaxed and at ease, but they didn't understand what we had gone through. And it was at that point that I actually went down to the nursing station and I basically screamed for help. And within 5 minutes, there was a whole team in place, and the C-section happened within about 20 minutes after that. And our baby girl was born. We didn't know anything. As soon as she came out, obviously off to resus, and that was it. We didn't know if it was a girl or boy. We knew nothing. Scariest day, arguably, of my life. So, Merry Christmas. On Christmas Eve, now, I'm going to complain, and you can all feel sorry for me a little bit, because my wife's birthday is on Christmas Day. Yeah. So I'm going to be spending a lot of money. There's like it's going to be disastrous. So 5:33, Jocelyn was born, and she was born at 790 grams. She was 24 weeks, 6 days, so far too young to make her way into this world. I talk about the first day in the NICU, and it's kind of a funny story, I guess. But Carolyn got settled in the recovery room, and I remember walking in, and I didn't know anything about the phone. I didn't know anything about washing hands. I knew nothing, right? And I just walked in, and I can only imagine what I looked like. I said, "I'm Baby Riley's dad." "Oh, okay. Baby Riley's just over there." I was probably bawling my eyes out. I had no idea what was going on, and I went over to this isolate. And I looked at this baby, and I'm like, that baby is way too big to be mine. Like, this is this a miracle? What's going? Is somebody playing a bad trick on me? I looked at the spelling on the isolate, and it was Riley. I looked at my band, because I didn't even know how to spell my name at that point in time. I looked at my band, and it said Reilly. So this isn't my baby. And the nurse, obviously was mortified that she had brought me over, wrong baby. So I guess, the first experience in the NICU was kind of an interesting one. And I can look back and we can kind of laugh at it a little bit now. And I think given the new unit, it's pretty darn tough to make or to have that happen at this point in time. All was forgotten when it was Josephine that actually said to me the next day, she said, "I've never seen a man in such disarray and crying as much as I saw you crying. You were just looking at this isolate when you saw your baby," and she said, and that's when I realized I had to take this family on. And so it was quite an experience the first couple days. We talk about journaling, and some of you who worked with Jocelyn and myself knew that I had this funny little thing around with me. And I journaled every single day that we were in the unit because I think it's important that one day I can share this. I see Jocelyn being 12 years old and complaining about friends and complaining about makeup. And I will go to reference page number 1 and say, "Do you realize what you went through? There is no reason to complain about anything in life, kiddo." But I just, this is just a quick excerpt from day 1. "Merry Christmas. Today comes with mixed emotions. I'm joyful of my new baby girl, Sad that your mom is recovering from major surgery. Sad for my girls who can't be with us. Sad for my parents who flew here from Florida for a nice Christmas with us. But most importantly, I've never been more scared and emotional in my life. My immediate fear is that you may not make it because you're just 24 weeks and you only weigh 1 pound 7 ounces. I realize you are in one of the best hospitals in the world, but that doesn't alleviate my fear. It's a long day of assisting your mom, dealing with visitors. We had a lot of visitors, and of course, praying for you. So that's just, and I just wrote in this thing, I've lost a bit of steam, but I try to write in it every week just to kind of update her life. And this is really important. This was, again, part of my existence, but super important to write. And it's funny, one of the nurses, I won't name names, she hid this thing on me because she knew I was so dependent on this. You should have seen me. I went absolutely bonkers. It was all in good fun. The initial hand-holding, I can't encourage that more. I can't even get across how blinded by emotions and fear that I was. And the first night we were there, Jenny was our nurse, and then the next day was Josephine. And the level of explanation, and I don't even remember what was said. I actually had it documented, but you know, the umbilical feeds, all the different monitors, everything that was going on was so well explained, and it just put me at ease. So when I went back to the room with Carolyn, I knew that our baby was going to be in good hands. And I think that's really super important, whether you feel that the parent is even aware of what you're saying or not. There's that indirect, here, let me hold your hand, I'm going to take you along, everything's going to be okay. That was so important to me. I'm somewhat educated, and I'm a Google dad, and the team learned that probably day 3 when I sat in on rounds and, you know, basically made an ass of myself because I asked so many questions, and the docs were like, "Oh God, we got one of these guys. He's a live one." It's because I never made it in medicine that this was my closest avenue to medicine. But I think it's really, really important to, though you obviously can't put yourself in our shoes unless you've been in our shoes. It's super important to just try to fathom how we're feeling, how scared we are. I think you had mentioned, or you as a mom, you often can't even hold your baby for the first week or 2. You don't even see your baby because you've had a C-section perhaps, and you can't move. You're so drugged up. So the first 3 days of Carolyn's life, she doesn't even remember seeing Jocelyn, whereas I was right there and so fortunate to be a part of that. I think reading the parents, and I guess I sort of, or gauging, spelt wrong, I speak to that, and you see so many different parents and so many different emotions. If you can try to understand and see what they're feeling, because it's going to be different, honestly, at every or any given minute. Next slide, please. So getting connected quickly, this was definitely to our advantage. My brother-in-law's brother-in-law had a friend that they went to high school with, and her name is Jack Horgan. And Jack, everyone knows Jack. They put us in contact with Jack, and Jack was our parent buddy and became immediate friend day 2, maybe day 3. And Jack said, go speak to Claire, go speak to Marianne, do this, do that. And it was the exact stepwise approach. I'm fairly systematic in how I do things. It was exactly what I needed because even though it was over Christmas and things were a little, the scheduling wasn't quite as, it was more part-time, I guess. It was Christmas hours. I think we met day 4, day 3, something like that. And it was so needed because we just needed to know who was at our fingertips, who we could reach out to. And of course, our social worker, I'm sorry, who was very important. She looked at us so many times going, oh boy, these two have no chance. So getting connected quickly, super, super important. We were very fortunate. I don't know how that can be facilitated better, but it sounds like there's some systems in place to make that happen where parents can be aware of integrated care or what's family integrated care. So I was told immediately that I had to be at the hospital X amount of time, and my wife had to be at the hospital X amount of time. But because of that, we'd get a free parking pass, and that was a big deal. That was a huge deal. So that was really nice. But for me, because I'm in the medical field and I know what rounds are all about, and I spent a lot of time in hospitals, this was exactly what I needed. Saying, Don, you can present at rounds. You can talk about your baby's night before. You can get really involved in the care. Take it away. And so I did that and became more educated on everything that was going on. We deal in my company in cardiology, so I knew a lot about heart and echo. I don't do a lot of brain stuff, but I felt somewhat knowledgeable, and that was really, really important to me. So I rushed here every single morning in traffic to make sure that I could present for 10 o'clock rounds. And oftentimes I would let Josephine go on break, and I would present, and her buddy was somewhere in the distance. But I can't express how important it was, because there's, as you all know, there's different teams that rotate through, and I'll never forget, I think one of the key learnings for me was when Dr. Perna said, what does a histogram look like? And it was all about controlling her oxygen levels. And we had a lot of discussions about trying to keep her oxygen a little lower, so we didn't, but it was tough because she swung all the time. So it was, but every single morning I'd come in and we'd take a look at all of the night before, everything that went on. And that was super, super important to me, because I could then present it back. And not that I was trying to test anybody's jobs at all, but it created a lot more buy-in. And Jocelyn, she was, she had some challenges for sure initially, but I think it was the ability for us to advocate for her with, of course, Josephine that it really it helped her prognosis out. I think the one thing that really helped me initially was nurses just saying, no, you do it, take it on. And I remember it might have been a diaper change or something, and I was scared. I had done this 10 years ago and 13 with my other daughters, but it's just different. It's a whole different thing in an isolate. It's a tiny baby, it's very scary. And one of the nurses basically said, no, do it. And from that day on, I just kind of took it upon myself to really want to stay involved and do everything I possibly could. And I took great pride in taking temperatures and doing diapers. And I didn't do the bathing because I made Carolyn do that. And then the point here about this struggling spousal relationship, I think of the 110 days we were here, Josephine was here for 100 of them, and she probably recognized some of the challenges between my wife and I, but it's unbelievable. And that's another thing I ask to keep on the forefront. Husband and wife have a tough time in here, and that's all I'm going to say. It's crazy. And I will tell you a funny story to that, actually, because it's still, the struggle goes on, of course, right? But based on how well I learned how to recognize, particularly during feeding, certain issues, cues, breathing challenges, etc., 2 of our biggest fights since we've been home have been because of burping. So Jocelyn's looking this way, Carolyn's burping her. I'm looking at Jocelyn, she's changing color, lips are turning a little blue, and I'm thinking to myself, how do I ask this question nicely? Honey, how do you see Jocelyn right now? I'm not a bad mother, I'm not negligent, do you not trust me, etc., etc. I became so sensitized to looking, studying, making sure everything was okay at the time, that for me now, 150% comfortable with anything that Jocelyn will present to me. She still has a couple challenges every now and again, and I probably contribute to some of those challenges with Carolyn, but it is what it is. I think the one thing that I will speak to is we all hit a wall, and day 107 was the worst day for me. Day 106, ironically, was the worst day for Carolyn. And I don't know what happens, but you just run out of steam. I remember walking in the front doors, and I hated this place. I hated the smell here. I hated the nurses. I hated the medical. I hated everything. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. And we have to recognize that wall, because it happens. Ours was pretty much at the end, but it's that roller coaster where it was a breathing issue. It was a feeding issue. And everyone said, this is always what happens. The feeding is the last thing to happen where we can let these babies go. Anyway, it happened. Second scariest day probably of my life. But I can't commend the nurse that took Jocelyn to Credit Valley enough. Super positive, super energetic, fun, just made our lives so much easier. And that's what you guys all do every day when transferring, when just coming to work. But we can't underestimate that fear.